In Hilchos space of Abchira, the Rambam brings in Perek Dalet that in the first Beis Hamikdash there was a wall between the Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim. The thickness of the wall was 1 amma, but as that was by the first Beis Hamikdash. By the second Beis Hamikdash, they had a doubt if that this amma, the wall, was a part of the measurement of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or was it part of the measurement of the Kodesh, the part before the Kodesh HaKadoshim? So therefore, in the second Beis Hamikdash, they made 2 pareches, 2 curtains. By the two, and between the 2 curtains was an amma. So that amma was against it was because of the thickness of the wall in the first Beis Hamikdash was an amma, and now they did not know where the amma was, so they had 2 curtains, and between them there was 1 amma towards the thickness of the wall. So, where's the source of this Rambam? The Kesef Mishnah brings that the Rambam has this doubt. This is brought in the Yerushalmi. In Yerushalmi, it's brought this doubt that they weren't sure where was this amma, what part of the measurement was it. Was it part of the measurement of the Kodesh HaKadoshim or part of the measurement of the Kodesh? If we look in Gemara, Gemara also brings about this amma, the wall of the Beis Hamikdash, and it's brought that in the first Beis Hamikdash there was the wall, in the second Beis Hamikdash there wasn't the wall, but over there it's brought that how it comes out from the Gemara is that they did know where the wall was supposed to be. Why did they not make a wall? Why did they not make the wall? Is because the Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, was much higher than the first Beis Hamikdash, and to hold up such a wall, they needed to have a thicker wall, and that they couldn't change any of their measurements of the first Beis Hamikdash. Everything, all the measurements in the Beis Hamikdash was exact. Everything was al pi nevuah, miyadash. It was everything from Hashem, and they couldn't change anything. However, it also brings this doubt, but not about where the wall was comes out. Rather, the doubt is, what is it? What kedusha has that part of the Beis Hamikdash? Is it part of the kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or part of the kedusha of the Kodesh? So it's also brought a similar question in Gemara, but not like in Yerushalmi, where it's brought, and like the Rambam brings, that the doubt was where was the actual wall supposed to be? Was it supposed to be towards in or towards out? Now, we need to understand, if anyways, according to the Rambam, they were not sure where the wall was, so why did they need to make 2 curtains and add place comes out according to the Rambam, first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash, there was a difference in measurement. So the first Beis Hamikdash there was 20 ames for the Kodesh HaKadoshim and 40 ames for the Kodesh, and there was a wall somewhere amongst this measurement. And in the second Beis Hamikdash they added the other amma because they needed to add between these 2 places amma because they weren't sure where it was. So if anyways they did not know where it was, why didn't they just make 1 curtain like it was in the Mishkan? And we can't say that the reason why they didn't we can't say that according to the Rambam there was a problem with changing the place because everything is according to Nebuah, because basically we have a question why, if they already did not make it the same way, why did they not make according to the Rambam a wall in the second Beis Hamikdash. Yes, it would needed to be more thick to hold up such a tall wall, but if anyways it's not the same place, why wasn't it even more wide and make a wall like in the first Beis Hamikdash in between those two places? So the Tosfos asks a question: Why did they not make a thick curtain between the Kodesh and Kodesh HaKodashim? Basically, according to the Tosfos, the two curtains was in the same thickness as the wall. So it means they were inside of the amma, inside of the thickness of the wall. They put one at the beginning and one at the end. According to the Rambam, it was out of the wall, and between them there was one amma. So that also asks more questions, but the Rambam starts to explain that when we look in the Mishkan, that Hashem says to make this, to make the Kodesh HaKodashim and the Kodesh, and between them there was this curtain. So if we look in the command, when Hashem commands to do it, it says that you should put the curtain, and this curtain should separate between the Kodesh HaKodashim and the Kodesh. So the curtain was there in order to separate the two places. But if we look further, when they actually did it, and when actually the other next two times, so it's brought that they put the Aron and then they put the curtain as to cover the Aron. It was not just to separate between the Kodesh HaKodashim and Kodesh. It was also to cover. To cover, it was like a covering and to hide the place of the Kodesh HaKodashim, the most holy place, so it was over there to cover it. So now, going back to the wall of the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Amma Traksin, so we need to also see what is this wall. Is it just to separate the two places, to separate the place of Kodesh HaKodashim and Kodesh? So then that's going to be one way, or it's over there to cover the two places. And Rabbi says that's also why there's a few explanations in the name of that wall is called the Amma Traksin, and Traksin is or from the word of separating what's inside and what's outside, or from the word of covering the inside as a covering to the inside. So these are going to be basically these are two things that we have in this separation between the Kodesh HaKodashim and the Kodesh. But if we look, the Rabbi explains that the Rambam, he looks on this separation as something else totally. The Amma Traksin was not over there. It was over there. There was both of these concepts, and to separate, and to cover over the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Aron, but that's not the main part of the Amma Traksin. The Amma Traksin had something for itself. It had its own identity, its own purpose, and then as side reasons, as side things to it, it had also the idea that it's separating and we see this also that this wall is called a name for itself. If we look in Malachim, when it speaks about the building of the Beis Hamikdash, so the place of the wall is called Devir, and also the Zohar brings the four categories of kedusha, of helikat in the Beis Hamikdash, and it counts Devir as one of them. The Rebbe's father also adds that each one of these four categories that the Zohar brings, the room, the ulames, the shachis, they're all going on the four letters of Hashem's name. So we see that the devir, this wall, is something for itself. It has its own kedusha. It's something for itself. It has its own purpose. It has its own importance. So now we're going to need, if the devir has something for itself, it has its own importance. So how come in the Mishkan there wasn't this Amma? In the Mishkan there was just a curtain. It didn't take up any of this space. So yesterday was explained something amongst these lines. In the other Sikha, the Rebbe explains how the Kodesh HaKadoshim was going, all places of the Beis Hamikdash was going higher and the Kodesh HaKadoshim was flat. Is because, and by the Mishkan everything was flat, is because there's a fundamental difference between the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash. The Mishkan was a temporary place, and the Beis Hamikdash was a permanent place. If you look in the Rambam, right in the beginning, the Rambam says that the Mishkan was over there only for a small time, Lefi Shah. Now, that explains many differences between the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan, because really everything in the Beis Hamikdash is corresponding. It's the same as how it was in the Mishkan. So how come there are differences like this, that we see that in the Mishkan there was only one curtain, and in the Beis Hamikdash there was a whole wall? One of the reasons is because in the Beis Hamikdash it was permanent. So that's why it needed to be a full wall in between it. We also see that the Rambam brings that there's three things that are main parts in the Beis Hamikdash. And one of the things he brings is the ulam. And if we look in the Mishkan, there wasn't that place. It was just the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There wasn't any entrance, but also that's because it's a permanent Beis Hamikdash, so that's why you needed to have the entrance was also a place for itself, as a designated place. So going back to in the Mishkan, since it was temporarily, that's why all the differences of holiness that was in the Mishkan, it wasn't so expressed and felt. In the Beis Hamikdash, every level of holiness, it was also more permanent in the actual place. As yesterday we saw, that's why there was steps between almost every single going up in holiness. There was also steps. But here the Rebbe brings also another thing. That's why before we go to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that is totally uncomparable to the all holiness of all other levels before that, there was a designated place that was the Dvir. That was and the first Beis Hamikdash was the wall, and the second Beis Hamikdash they needed to have this full Amma in between it as a designated place to separate between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the place before. So the Kohen Gadol, when you would walk into the Beis Hamikdash and the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the second Beis Hamikdash, needed also to go through the whole hallway between the two paredes. That was as a stop, as a hefsek and mutzat between the holiness of the Kodesh HaKadoshim and everything before it. So that's why, according to the Rambam, there was two curtains and between it the Amma. It's not just that it took the same. It needed to be a full Amma in between it because it needed to have a full designated place. On the other hand, they couldn't make it. They didn't make in the second Beis Hamikdash a wall, and it would be more than an Amma, because to change. The only purpose why they added this place was just because they needed to have this designated place because it's a Beis Hamikdash. To add more, that was already unnecessary, so there was the two pareches. Rebbe explains more, but there's another point. The Shabbos is Shabbos Chazayin, and everyone knows the mashal of the Mezitcher Mag, the Rarbiskok and Berdichev, with the clothing of the son, that he ruins it 3 times. The Rebbe brings out also over there that point, that in the reason why the Beis Hamikdash is compared to a clothing and not to a house, is why is there the example of a clothing, not the house? Because a clothing shows according to the clothing, you could see who the person is. How tall is he? How short? So the same thing. The Beis Hamikdash, it was expressed in every single part of the Beis Hamikdash was expressed as Helikai. But the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi, it's going to be a lot more Bishlemus, which I'll be there.
Amen.